Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 257. Today, I'm so excited to be talking to you about my brand new book, The Homeschool Advantage, a child-focused approach to raising lifelong learners. We're going to talk a little bit about it, about what it is all about, and just why homeschooling is something that is good and works for just about any family. So I hope that you will take a lot out of this episode, and I hope that if you do have the book already and you are enjoying it, that you will let me know or leave a rating or review on Amazon or anywhere that you got your book. It really helps, and I would appreciate it. But really, I would love to hear what you think. So feel free to drop me a message over on the contact form at the website, or shoot me a message on social media, because I can't wait to hear how the book has impacted you and your homeschool. All right, we will get right on with today's episode after this word from our sponsor. Are you a homeschooling parent with a child struggling with reading, writing, or spelling? Lexercise can help. Their online platform offers self-paced learning and expert instruction customized to your child's needs, all based on the Orton-Gillingham approach. We used Lexercise back when Logan was first diagnosed with dyslexia when she was, 8 or 9. And oh my goodness, the personalized support they gave us, the attention to detail, the program itself was just incredible. And Logan grew leaps and bounds. I'm so proud to have them as a sponsor for the podcast right now, because more people need to know about their services. You can join thousands of families who have seen effective results, including mine, and have unlocked their child's love of learning. Visit Lexercise.com/learners for a free learning disability screener and to learn more about their programs. Check them out and let me know what you think. Ask me if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them or direct you to my contacts at Lexercise. But if you have a kiddo who struggles with reading, writing, or spelling, you definitely want to check out Lexercise.com/learners and see what they can offer you. All right, let's get on with today's episode. Hey there, I am so excited to be with you today for a couple reasons. The main reason is I have been talking about my book coming out for months and months, and it is here. The response has been wonderful. I've heard some really great feedback. My favorite is from a reader who said that she loves the conversational style of the book. It feels like she's sitting down and having a cup of coffee with me. Another reader with whom I've done a coaching call said that it was like reading through a coaching session. And I just absolutely love that, because my hope was for homeschool moms who picked up the book to read it to feel like they were sitting down with me, and that it was conversational and that it was actionable. I'm a homeschooling mom of 4 kids myself. One is graduated, one is a senior in high school, my other is a freshman in high school, and then it's all rounded out with a 6th grader. And so I know that time is at a premium, and it's hard to make the room to read books, let alone digest them and then implement. And so the Homeschool Advantage, a child-focused approach to raising lifelong learners, is all about how we as homeschooling parents, whether we are brand new to homeschooling or we are veterans who have been doing it for a while, can take actionable steps today to make our approach more child-focused and to do small things as quickly as we can to make big impact. And at the end of each chapter, I have a section called Try This. And the Try This section is just bulleted points that summarize key things in the chapter. So if you really don't have a lot of time to read, I have been in seasons like that, you can skim and then you can go to the Try This section for actionable tips and suggestions that you can take right now to just do one thing. Here's the thing I want to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about the book, what you can expect from it, and to encourage you to check it out of your library or go purchase it anywhere books are sold, Barnes & Noble, christianbook.com, Amazon, wherever, and to use it to have the best homeschool year ever. But today I want to talk about some different things that you can do and you can take from it and why I wrote it in the first place. Okay, so if you've been following me for a while, you know that I am a huge proponent of getting our kids involved in their own education. I think we underestimate our young population often. I also know from experience, both with my own kids and with kids that I've worked with through the public school system when I first was teaching, as well as throughout the years, the kids that I've met through conventions and conferences, my online community, the Learners Lab, and coaching and consulting sessions that I've done, that our kids are more motivated, especially when we are raising neurodivergent kids, if they have some say in their education. I think a couple of the challenges that the current public school landscape faces is that it is so, number one, top down, where administrators, board members, even government officials are making the decisions for what our kids are going to learn without actually taking the individual kids into consideration when they're making the rules and the regulations. And it is so much more deficit based than strengths based. So our kids are constantly being told what they're not good at and where they're not measuring up. And so they feel a constant sense of failure as they struggle to get to where they need to be in order to attain this ambiguous thing called graduation. And I think as homeschoolers, we have this amazing opportunity to flip the script on its head. We have the ability to get our kids involved no matter how old they are and give them a say in how their homeschool is going to look. And we have the unique opportunity to focus on their strengths even more than their deficits. So what do I mean by that? Strengths versus weaknesses versus deficits, strengths versus interests. All of these things are things that I've talked about on the podcast before, but I really want to hone in today to tell you why focusing in on a strengths-based approach to education and keeping our children at its focus gives us advantages that just pay off long term. Okay, so when our kids are constantly faced with where the areas in which they struggle, they feel like failures. I'm going to give you a perfect example of that kind of in a nutshell and kind of compare it to a different example of what a strengths-based versus a deficits-based approach feels like. So my brother, I don't talk about my extended family very often on here for various reasons, including the fact that I don't see them very often. We're scattered and my brother lives 3,000 miles away from me. But when he was younger, he struggled with some learning challenges. He struggled with dyslexia. He struggled with dysgraphia, although it wasn't really identified at the time. He also struggled with ADHD and just some slow processing. I think that while it wasn't described as slow processing, then it was just a slow learner. I think now with what we know about learning and about how the brain works, we would identify him with some auditory or some visual processing challenges. I see it in my own kids and it reminds me of my brother. My brother struggled through school. He was always in special needs classes. He was always getting pulled out to work on the things that he wasn't good at. And he constantly felt like he wasn't a good student and that he was stupid. He would get into trouble. He would cause trouble. He would goof off. And it wasn't actually until high school when he found golf that he started to turn that aspect of himself around. He started to get better grades because he was on a newly emerging golf team for our high school, and you could only participate in sports if you had the grades. And he found that he excelled in the area of golf, and he didn't want to give it up. So as he grew older, his grades started improving, not because he became a better learner or he became a better student, but because he was motivated to get those grades up and to work on those areas because he was finding that his strength was in golf and he wanted to keep working in those aspects of his life. And he went on to graduate high school, solidly middle of his class, and to go to continuing education for golf. He worked with the PGA for a while, and he's a junior golf pro at a course. I don't actually know what his title is anymore, but he has worked on and with golf courses for his entire career. And now, as an adult, he lives in Southern California, where he hits the beach in the morning, hits the golf course to work all late morning to early afternoon or late afternoon, and then golfs a few rounds on his own and then comes home to go back to the beach. So he's living the golfer lifestyle. We used to joke and say he was like a surfer. He ran the lifestyle of a surfer who doesn't surf. Just hang out at the beach, go to concerts, go to bonfires, and basically instead of surfing, he golfs. I think had he been able to find some of those strengths earlier on, or he's very analytical, if a teacher had focused more on the way he analyzed data and behaviors and the geometry of figuring out how things worked together, he may have discovered that love of golf or just the desire to get better grades earlier on. Now, let's compare that and contrast that with my daughter, Logan. Logan has many of the same struggles that my brother had in his life. Logan struggled with some attention issues, some processing, auditory and visual processing issues. She has generalized anxiety disorder. She was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, as well as dyslexia way early on. We decided with her to take a better late than early approach to any of her academics. And so we didn't push her. We focused in on areas where she was already showing strengths. She's very creative. She's very intuitive. She's very compassionate. She loved telling stories. So when she was younger and wanted to write down stories in her broken kind of font and handwriting, I got her lots and lots of blank books from the Target dollar spot and pads of paper and sketchbooks. And I bought an Amazon Echo Dot. They were brand new at the time. And I taught her how to ask Alexa to tell her how to spell words. And so when I wasn't available for her to dictate her stories to me and she wanted to write things down, she could park herself by the Echo Dot and she could ask Alexa to help her write stories. Logan began to see herself as a creative, as a writer, even when she struggled, and she just kept going. When Logan now, who is a very proficient reader, in fact, we've got the opposite problem. We need to tell her to put her books away so she can go to sleep at night because she keeps getting caught up in stories. When she struggles with something now, she will just tell people flat out, I need a few minutes to process that because it takes me a little bit longer. I have dyslexia, and sometimes I struggle to process the written word. I remember being in one of her rehearsals for a play she was doing, and she was reading part of the script cold and hadn't looked at it before and stumbled over a couple of the words, and somebody was going to correct her, and she just held up her hand and she said, no, I want to get it myself. But because my brain is dyslexic, it sometimes takes me a few passes before I get it. So just give me a second and I'll be just fine. This was my 13 or 12-year-old girl. In most cases, a 12 or a 13-year-old girl would not want to admit that she had a problem or that she was struggling. She would have been embarrassed by it. Instead, it was an empowering situation because of the differences in approach, right? We focused throughout her childhood and early learning experiences on the things in the areas in which she shined, right? On the things that she was good at, as opposed to my brother, who was constantly reminded of the areas in which he struggled because he needed to get up to grade level or whatever so he could pass to the next grade and the next grade and the next grade. And with Logan, we were able to just forget about grade levels and let her ease in. And she was able to do science and history and other areas, math, at either on grade level or even a little bit ahead, and then let her reading and writing catch up when it got there. Taking a strength-based approach doesn't mean we forget about the weaknesses. It just means that we double down on those areas of strength so that when they are faced with their areas of weakness, they're able to accommodate for themselves in a way that's comfortable for them. I love this quote from Deepak Chopra, and I have it in my book. The quote is one of those ones that has flittered around throughout the years, but is very simple. If a child is poor at math but good at tennis, most people would hire a math tutor. I would rather hire a tennis coach. I love that quote because it doesn't just mean we go all in on the strengths. It just means that we spend more time and more resources and more money if our resources are limited in the area of strength, because that's going to continue to build up our kids' confidence and give them the ability to tackle the weaknesses with a renewed strength. Doesn't mean we don't hire a math tutor. It means that if we were faced with a choice, we would go the route of the strengths. My older daughter is a prime example of that. She struggled early on in a couple different subjects, and we put them aside for a while, and we spent more time and more resources and more money in the areas of her strength. We got her voice lessons and acting classes and dance classes and private dance lessons, and we auditioned for lots and lots of shows. And those areas of weakness, when she was feeling confident, we'd tackle a little bit at a time. So it just means really leaning into where your kids are strong, because we want them to feel empowered to tackle those areas of weakness. Now, all these years later, as my daughter's getting ready to approach the college application process, she's recognizing the areas where she's weaker and wanting to do a little bit more to just get her to the point where she's competitive in those areas as well. And so she's got the confidence, she's got the ability to tackle that at her own pace, and she feels stronger about it. So we can really hone in on those when we take that strength-based but child-focused approach. And what does that mean? Does that mean that we throw everything else out with the bathwater? We only do the things that our kids love and are good at? No, we balance what we're doing with our kids so that they get a lot of what they love and they have a say in it. And that's the other point I want to bring up. In the book, I talk a lot about giving our kids the opportunities to have a say in what they're learning. And this just means that we want to consult with our kids either at the very beginning of the year and at the end of the year, or throughout the year. One of the simple strategies that I use for this is I sit down with my kids at the beginning and I talk about what kinds of things they're interested in learning. So if you've been a listener of the podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about CTC Math for the last couple of years. They have been supportive sponsors of the podcast, and as I've told you before, I'm a customer. My kids use CTC Math in their homeschool. I am a paying subscriber and have been for a number of years, even before CTC sponsored the podcast. I am a raving fan, and I will continue talking about their resources and their program until long after I'm done homeschooling, because I think it's really versatile for so many different types of families, whether your kids are super strong in an area or super weak in an area of math. It allows you to customize their education when it comes to math. I've talked to so many families over the years that I want to share with you a message that I received from Sandy, a longtime listener who was content in what they were using until, again, they weren't, and they switched over to CTC Math based on a recommendation that they'd heard on the podcast. Sandy writes, "We too started using CTC Math following your recommendation, Colleen. One of my sons is so dedicated. Then, after watching over his shoulder, my other son started using it too. They both now do an hour each workday by choice. I even enjoy it myself. I do the lessons with them, which is a handy brush up, and will occasionally do some of the algebra lessons ahead of time. Math was not my strong suit in school, but now I love it, and I wish the program had been available in the 80s. Too many people think they're terrible at math, but I truly believe we all just need a method of learning that suits us. CTC Math seems to work for all three of us." So check out ctcmath.com or go to the link over in the show notes for this episode and click on it to go over there and see the offer that they have for podcast listeners. You don't have to just take my word for it. You can take Sandy's as well. CTC is a great program and could be a wonderful benefit for your homeschool. All right, let's get back to today's episode. When my teens were entering high school, my older two, my 21-year-old and my 17-year-old, were entering high school at first, I would take them out for a Starbucks date and we would have coffee together and we'd talk about what their plans were for their own school year and then what my plans were and what I wanted them to get out of it. And we'd come to terms with what they needed to do versus what they wanted to do and how we could fit all of those things in. And so I still do that. And I'm about to, as this year dawns, because I'm getting ready to kickstart our year. We've got about another week and a half before we go all in on our homeschooling. I'm going to sit down with each of the kids and talk about the different things that they want to learn throughout the year. One way that I do that with all of my kids is I put up a poster board, or I buy Post-it notes. They're giant chart size Post-it notes from Post-it brand. I buy them on Amazon. And I stick one up. We have a spot in our dining room that everybody passes all the time, and it fits one of these chart papers perfectly. And I make sure there are markers out, and I write at the top of the chart paper what I want to learn about. And I'll jot some things down, like I want to learn to crochet. I want to do some more scrapbooking. I haven't scrapbooked in a while, and different like hobbies and subjects that I want to learn about. And I encourage the kids to do the same. So crocheting is one example. My second daughter, who is 15, has been telling me for years she wanted to learn to crochet. And they just started at the Fine Arts Association, where my kids have taken dance classes and acting classes before. They just started a teen crochet club on Monday nights. And so she's going to join that. They're going to work at whatever pace the kids, whatever abilities the kids in that group have. The facilitator of that group is going to teach basic stitches and then advanced stitches as the kids accelerate. And they'll meet for an hour every Monday and crochet together. And so she'll be doing that. She wants to learn more about entomology and insects and more specific species. And my younger son wants to learn more about meteorology and severe weather. And since that represents a life science and an earth science, we decided that the two of them and me, that I would round it out with a physical science. And so we'll start the year with life science, entomology. We'll go into the second trimester with meteorology and severe weather, and then we'll round out the end of the year with some kind of physical science. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with them yet, but that's our compromise. Each of the two of them are picking something, and then I'm picking something. And then they'll be able to go for their reading on their own, whatever they want to read about, and bring in some more interests in that way. And then extracurricularly, they'll be able to choose some of their outside activities. So I want to encourage you as you enter this school year to think about where your kids' strengths are, where their interests are, and have a conversation with them so you can merge the strengths and the interests together to inform the decisions that you make in your schooling. And if you need support for figuring out where the strengths are, where the interests are, how I come to terms with those different things, I want to encourage you to pick up the book, The Homeschool Advantage, A Child-Focused Approach to Raising Lifelong Learners. And at the very least, flip through some of the quotes in there from families and the try this suggestions and the anecdotes and stories that readers have sent in so that you can guide your steps as you go. Even if you just skim through and do the try this section and implement one thing a week in your homeschool, you'll already be turning yourself around and getting a more child-focused approach. There are practical tips in there that can get you started right now. And I want to encourage you to go over to the show notes for this episode. I'll mention them again at the end, but raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast, because I have a download that I had shared a couple of years ago with a conference that I was speaking at. And it is a 7-page like workbooky set of worksheets where you can work through them to help discover some of your children's strengths. There's some interview questions, some things you can ask your kids about. And I encourage you to do those a couple times a year, or at least once a year with each of your kids, and then store them away so that you can compare each year as you go. And then you can use those to guide your steps in creating a more child-focused approach to how you homeschool. I also want to take a quick second to talk about how this kind of fits in with curriculum, because I know a lot of times people hear, I need to be more strength-based, or I need to be more child-focused, or I need to do this or do that, or do this and this. And they think, I can't do it all. And you're absolutely right. You can't do it all. And I don't want you to throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? I don't want you to think that I need to find a whole new curriculum. I need to find a whole new set of work to be able to use with my kids if I'm going to do it this way. No. A child-focused approach to homeschooling, a strength-based approach to learning and teaching, can actually be done with any curriculum, literally any curriculum. It doesn't matter what you choose to use, because that's the tool. The curriculum and the methodology are the tools you're using to teach your kids. The strength-based focus and child-focused approach is taking whatever resources and tools you have and using them in a way that puts your child and their strengths front and center. So say you're like me, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about, and you're hearing it, you already heard it in this episode, me talk about CTC math. Say you're using CTC math as your math curriculum. Using a child-focused approach to CTC math, our current sponsor, simply means you're looking at the child in front of you and you're not just putting them in the grade level they're supposed to be in. You're seeing, okay, this particular child is more accelerated in math and gets concepts very quickly. So I'm going to put them in a year ahead, and I'm going to have them take the end of the unit tests before they start the unit work to see if they already know the majority of it. Then I'm going to look at that unit test, and I'm going to mark off the sections, the lessons they've already grasped. Because here's the thing. If your child is getting the concepts on the final test, why would you make them go through the lesson for something they've already mastered, right? This is a chance for you to fill in the holes. So then they can go back and they can only do the lessons in the areas that they struggled. And then when they finish just filling in the spots where they didn't know the material, they can take the unit test again and see how they did. Instead of doing the curriculum as it's written, you're making it more child-focused, and you're honoring their strengths by not making them redo it and then letting them just go do the stuff that they need to learn. You can do the same thing if you're using a box curriculum that has a history program and a science program and all the other programs like built into it. You can look at what they already know. You can look at how they like to learn. And in the areas that they already shine, you can use a different approach. Another example of that is we had a history textbook years and years ago when my son was in, I think, 10th and 11th grade. And he did not like to read to learn material. He loved to use videos and podcasts. But I knew he needed to be able to read the material. He also didn't like to write. He liked to talk about his things. And we were already doing some writing in a different area. And answering discussion questions in his history work textbook didn't make sense to me when I was already working on the writing in another area. Making him do more of the writing that was already a challenge for him was just an exercise in frustration. So what we ended up doing was I wanted him to be able to read a textbook or read text material or nonfiction material and extrapolate from there, learn the material, draw conclusions, make critical understandings, compare and contrast what was going on in the past history with what's going on currently, and be able to draw really good conclusions from that. So I would have him read through an entire unit for the first and the second day of the week. Monday and Tuesday, he'd just be reading his history textbook. Wednesday and Thursday, he'd be watching videos and YouTube shorts and different things like that based on the same topics. So we would find together different videos that supported or talked about the same topics that were in the unit he'd just read about. And then on Fridays, we'd meet over coffee or hot chocolate or whatever, and we'd talk about the things he went through or he understood or he discovered. I'd use the discussion questions as a guide just to make sure he was comprehending what he was reading, because reading comprehension was something that we were working on. But I was already doing writing in a different area. It's an example of how to use a regular textbook-based program with your child front and center. You don't have to use things as they're written. You get to use them as tools in the way that your child learns best. Okay, so simple example of how to adapt a curriculum so you're using it and you're not making more work for yourself, but you're also honoring the child that you have in front of you. Okay, schooling gives us the opportunity to do that because we don't need to do all of the busy work. We don't need to check a lot of boxes. We just need to make sure that we're giving our kids a well-rounded education and we're exposing them to a lot of different ways of learning. Over the next several weeks, I'm going to talk about different areas within the book and within our own homeschooling journey and focus in, like hone in on one of the concepts. So that might be collaborative learning. That might be creativity. That might be building your family team a little bit more through the context of homeschooling. But we are going to go through over the next several months, different areas of this book, taking a deep dive to support what you're learning in the book, as well as what I want, what I couldn't get in. I could only write a certain number of words. I think the word limit I had on this was like 65 or 70,000. And so I couldn't get everything that there is to know about a child-focused and strength-based approach to learning in those 60,000 words. So we're going to expand on it. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, and you want to listen to this podcast, go pick up the book anywhere books are sold and skim through it so you're ready to take that deep dive with me over the next couple months. Next week, we're going to have an interview with a guest that's a very special guest, which actually leans right into the topics of the book. And so I want to honor that, and I want to really get out that interview to you. And then after that, we're going to take a deep dive, one chapter at a time, one concept at a time, so you can really hone in on the different aspects of a child-focused and strength-based approach to learning with your kids alongside of them. So grab the book, have it at hand, dog ear it, mark it up, sticky note it, and we are going to take that deep dive. Okay, I talked at the beginning about something that I wanted to say at the end of the podcast. If you have the book already, or you go and get it after listening to this and you're going to jump in with us, I would love it if you would share. So hold up a picture like I'm doing now if you're looking at this in the video podcast, and snap a picture, tag me so I can reshare it. Share it with your friends who are homeschooling, your co-op. Get the word out about the book. It's a bite-sized, easy read that will empower you to really know your kids and have just a thriving homeschool. And I can't wait for you to get your hands on it. But then I would love it if you would go to Amazon and leave a rating and or a review, and then take a picture, take a screenshot of your review on Amazon once it's published, and send me an email with that picture at support@raisinglifelonglearners.com, along with your name and your address, because I have some stickers, I have some buttons, I have some other little goodies, some fidgets and things for your kids, and a signed book plate that I can send you as my thank you for leaving that review. Here's the thing. It feels so hard to do as an author to ask you to go out and buy the book and to ask you to go and leave a review. But the bottom line is I want people to know about the book. I worked really hard on it. I love the book. I love the way it turned out. I've gotten really positive feedback so far, but algorithms work the way algorithms work. Bookstores will show the books the more copies are sold and the more reviews are written. And so it really helps. Reviews help authors. You can, if you don't have the means to buy the book yourself, go ask your public library to stock it. Ask them to order it and then check it out at the library when it comes in. That helps too. That gets the word out as well, because they'll talk to other libraries and get it stocked elsewhere. And then let me know that you did so I can send you my thanks. Support@raisinglifelonglearners.com. Just send me a screenshot, send me your address, and I will send some goodies out to you as my thank you for supporting this work. Okay, so we will be back same time, same place next week with an interview from one of my longtime heroes in the world of gifted education. And we'll talk a little bit more about the book as we go along. So grab your copy and then hunker down for these next several weeks of episodes. Thanks so much for listening. I know you have so many different ways that you can spend your time, and I really appreciate that you've chosen to spend your time with me. I'll see you here, same time, same place next week. Check out our sponsors for this episode, CTC Math and Lexercise, and check out the show notes with resources and links to all the different things that I talked about, including my book, the community, and other articles and posts and podcast episodes about strengths-based and child-focused learning for you and your kids in your homeschool. Okay, I'll see you next week. Enjoy your kids. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.